On Stella's birthday, I promised I'd grant her one birthday wish. Anything I could do, I'd do it. She rolled her eyes and said sarcastically, "In that case, I wish you'd get lost. Can you do that?" The people around us burst out laughing. "Aren't you asking the impossible?" They joked. Everyone knew Leo was a human barnacle. You couldn't shake him off. He'd stick around no matter who else left. Even Stella thought that when he finally nodded and said okay, he was just messing with her. Until she realized that from that day on, I really, truly never showed up in front of her again. In that case, I wish you'd get lost. Can you do that? After Stella's impatient words, the quiet, private room erupted in laughter. The candles on her birthday cake were still flickering, the dancing light illuminating every face contorted in hysterics. My awkwardness and helplessness were the best fuel for the mood. Someone blurted out without a second thought, "Come on, Stella, you're just making it hard for him. Everyone knows Leo loves following you around. He's the last person on earth who'd ever get lost, right? Give me a break. He's like gum on her shoe. She's probably sick to death of him, and he's over here talking about granting wishes." Amid the piercing laughter, Stella's gaze remained cold as she looked at me. I knew she could see my embarrassment. I knew she could hear the mockery in everyone's words. She just couldn't be bothered to speak up for me, couldn't be bothered to defend me. And if she didn't say anything, no one else was going to bail me out. I stood there awkwardly, trying my best to ignore the strange looks and forcing a numb smile. "At least let me stay until after your birthday is over." Someone next to me snorted. "Dude, that's next level simping." Even Stella frowned. "Leo, are you ever going to quit? You asked for my birthday wish. That was it. I want you to get lost. Right now." After she said that, the room finally fell completely silent. The candles were still stuck in the cake, the wax melting into colorful tears that dripped onto the frosting. I stood there with my head down for a long moment before looking up at her seriously. "Then blow out your candles. I'll leave after you do." Stella probably found it funny, because she actually leaned over and blew out all the candles in one breath. Then, as if to provoke me, she shot back, "Happy now?" I nodded. "Okay," I said. Then I actually stood up, put on my jacket, and walked to the door under everyone's silent stares. Before I pushed the door open to leave, I paused and looked back at Stella, who was sitting in the center of the group. There was so much I wanted to say. I wanted to tell her she was allergic to eggs and shouldn't eat cake from bakeries, that it might rain later and she shouldn't skip the umbrella just for convenience, and that if she got sick, she needed to go to the doctor right away and not just tough it out. But in the end, looking at her impatient expression, I edited it all down to a single sentence. "Don't be upset. It's bad for your heart. I'm leaving, Stella." On the cab ride home, I saw a video one of Stella's friends posted on their social feed. In the video, a few people were laughing their heads off, placing bets on how many days it would take for me to come crawling back to apologize. Some said a week, others said 3 days. Someone even said I'd show up the next morning pretending nothing had happened. When they turned the camera on Stella, she scowled and pushed it away, muttering, "This is so stupid." But someone else quickly asked her, "You were so harsh just now. Aren't you afraid Leo might actually not come back?" In the video, Stella clearly froze for a second before scoffing he wouldn't dare. The video ended with a roar of unrestrained laughter. I stared blankly at the dark screen. The driver glanced at me in the rearview mirror a few times before asking cautiously, "Fight with your girlfriend, son?" I paused for a moment. No, it wasn't a fight and she wasn't my girlfriend. I almost laughed at myself. After nearly 10 years of being by Stella's side, we still had no official title on the day we parted. Not quite lovers, not even friends. If you had to put a label on it, her friend's description was the most accurate. A leech you can't get rid of. For 4 years in college, I brought breakfast for her every single day because of her stomach problems, and I memorized all her strange allergies. I took care of her when she had fevers and colds, went with her to the hospital, and stayed up all night by her bedside while she was on an 4-drip. Stella had a terrible temper, and many of her friends couldn't stand it. Only I could remain completely calm after her outbursts and gently remind her, "Don't get upset. It's bad for your heart. For all these years, her friends whispered behind my back that I was a pathetic simp, a free butler. They said I deserved it when she took me for granted and ordered me around. They said she treated me terribly because I let her. And they weren't wrong. But what no one knew was that my boundless, unconditional devotion to Stella wasn't about losing my dignity for love. I wanted her to be healthy, safe, and carefree. It was because of the heart beating inside her chest. The heart that belonged to the woman I loved. I didn't have much stuff at the apartment we shared. After packing up one box, I asked the cleaning lady to throw the rest away. Her eyes filled with pity. But these things are still perfectly good. Why don't you want them? That box was full of luxury goods, most of which were things Stella had bought on a whim for some guy she was chasing, then casually tossed to me when he didn't want them. Some of it was compensation, like the time she suddenly craved cake in the middle of the night, and I drove across half the city to buy it, only to stand outside her door all night because she was too lazy to open it. Or the time she, without any warning, gave my guaranteed spot in grad school to her new boyfriend. And times like today, when she just took her bad mood out on me and told me to get lost in front of everyone. My compensation would inevitably be a watch or a pair of cufflinks. Stella would never say sorry. But luckily, I never expected her to. I snapped back to the present and nodded at the cleaning lady. If you want any of it, just take it. I don't need it anymore. With that, I booked the earliest flight to Atlanta. I had spent 10 years in Boston to be with Stella, almost forgetting I was from Atlanta myself. Before leaving, I hesitated, wondering if I should block all of Stella's contact information. In the end, I decided against it. It's not like she ever contacted me first anyway. The whole world knew how much Stella couldn't stand me. For once, I was doing exactly what she wanted by leaving for good. She was probably thrilled. Just before the plane took off, I happened to see that Stella, who hadn't posted in ages, had a new update on her feed. The picture was of two clasped hands, with a caption written in what sounded like a young guy's playful tone. She's my responsibility now. My heart seized for a moment, but the feeling was quickly replaced by relief. This was for the best, I told myself. I had clung to Stella's side for nearly a decade, day after day trying to catch the reflection of the moon in the water, searching for shadows of an old love in her. But over those 10 years, we had become like two twisted trees, our roots tangled together, strangling each other. It was good to be apart. She let me go and I let her go. It was a 10-year dream. It was time to wake up. My life back in Atlanta was not what I expected. A sudden whirlwind of work and long overdue catch-ups with family and friends kept me so busy I didn't even have time to feel sad. Stella called a week after I got back, on the same day as my college reunion. When the name Stella flashed on my screen, I thought I was seeing things. Assuming it was an emergency, I quickly walked a few steps away to a quiet corner and answered. But after saying hello, a few times there was only silence on the other end. In that instant, a million thoughts raced through my mind. Had something happened to her? Did she not have her medication with she? Was she in an accident? Hit by a car? Or sick and alone? For a split second, I saw an image of Chloe lying in my arms, her face covered in blood. My heart clenched so tightly I could barely breathe. My hand was shaking so much I could hardly hold the phone. My voice trembled. What's wrong? Stella, say something. Is anyone with you? Don't be scared. I'm calling 911. My mind went completely blank, unable to think, filled with nothing but an overwhelming sea of red. In that moment, I even started blaming myself. Why wasn't I there for her at a time like this? What if she got hurt because I left? A tidal wave of guilt, pain, and despair crashed down on me from all sides. Just as my trembling hand was about to switch screens to dial, a burst of laughter erupted from the other end of the line. Ha ha ha, I told you so. He's such a spineless simp, trying to play hard to get. Ha ha ha, knew he was faking it. One call and he cracks. Stella was right all along. I stood frozen, as if struck by lightning. All the sounds around me faded away. For the first time, Their voices sounded so grating, so humiliating. I was still numb from the panic, and I had to lean against the wall just to stay upright. The missing part of my heart felt like it was being pierced by a howling wind. It hurt so much I couldn't breathe. Stella's voice soon came through the phone, tinged with her familiar indifference. "Leo, that's enough. Come back now or don't bother coming back at all." Her casual tone felt like a hard slap across my face, stinging and hot. My hand holding the phone was still trembling, and the pain in my chest was so intense I could barely stand. Before this, I had never truly been angry with her, not when her friends made fun of me, not when she publicly humiliated me. I never took it to heart. I thought it didn't matter. But in that moment, as she casually said, "That's enough," I realized how stupid I had been. Stupid enough that only now, in this very second, could I finally see it clearly. Stella and Chloe were two completely, totally different people. I could no longer convince myself to find excuses for her selfishness. I couldn't comfort myself by saying she was just immature and didn't know any better. I couldn't lie to myself and pretend I didn't care, saying, "It's okay." It wasn't okay. It was never okay. My eyes instantly burned hot, an unstoppable redness creeping into them. My nose stung terribly. I fought back a sob, took a deep breath, and said calmly, "Stella, the game is over. I'm done playing." I don't remember how long I sat huddled in that small stairwell, until my legs went numb. I didn't cry the day I left Stella. I didn't cry when her friends mocked me or made things difficult. I didn't cry when I sat alone in the pouring rain, holding a cake outside her door until dawn, or when I stayed up all night taking care of her when she was sick. I always believed my tears had run dry the day Chloe died, and that I would never cry for anyone else in this lifetime. But that wasn't true. Humiliation and pain don't just disappear because you lie to yourself. All those piled up emotions have to find an outlet eventually. And I finally understood. The reason I used to cry so easily was because there was someone who cherished my tears, someone whose heart ached for me. Crying could solve problems. It was useful. But after she was gone, crying became useless. There would be no one to smile and wipe away my tears with a blood-covered hand, comforting me by saying it wasn't my fault. It wasn't my fault that her craving for ice cream led to the car crash. It wasn't my fault she died on her 18th birthday. Chloe knew I would blame myself, so she forgave me first. She said, "It's okay. It's not your fault." But that day, kneeling on the ground and holding Chloe's cooling body, I just couldn't understand. She had finally escaped that suffocating home. We had just gotten our acceptance letters from the same university, and we had just walked out of the school hand in hand with our graduation photos. We were one step away from happiness and freedom. Why? Why was it so hard? I had written about regret and despair thousands of times in essays, but only on that day did I truly know what regret was. The overwhelming despair and pain were like a mountain, nearly crushing me. For many, many days after, I couldn't stop reliving that day, couldn't stop seeing Chloe's blood-soaked face. I was like a drowning man, sinking in my own grief. I even wished it had been me who died that day. I almost wished Chloe had blamed me, but her last words were still, "It's okay." The person who died on her 18th birthday was Chloe, but I was left behind, forever stuck on that day. After that, Leo was more like a walking corpse. I couldn't even function normally. Until the day I learned Chloe's heart had been transplanted and was beating again in someone else's chest. It felt like I had found a new reason to live. I knew from the beginning that this kind of emotional transference was just self-deception, that staying by Stella's side like a masochist was just a way of atoning. But so what? I didn't care. I deserved to drown with my eyes wide open. All I knew was that as long as I could see Stella alive and well, I could trick myself into believing that she was still alive. That she would have a 19th, 20th, and 28th birthday. That she would have a new, different life, where she could do whatever she wanted. And I would always be there to help her. I was willing to pay any price for it, even if it meant losing all my dignity. But was I wrong? That day, I sat in the dark, cramped storage room for a long time, until my eyes were dry. Finally, I took out my phone and blocked Stella on everything. I was wrong. To mistake a fleeting dream for reality. This was my punishment for letting my heart be trampled. After the call was disconnected, the private room fell silent. Stella barely had time to process it. Leo had actually hung up on her. A few people started trying to liven things up. He's really getting full of himself. Does he actually think he can just settle down in Atlanta and never come back? I'm telling you, he's just playing hard to get. Probably just waiting for Stella to give in. Guys like him, I've seen a million of them. They just want to. Stella had heard these kinds of comments countless times before. To her face, behind her back, in open mockery and subtle digs. Whenever Leo heard them, he would pretend he didn't. If he understood the insult, he'd pretend he didn't get it. That spineless, submissive way he accepted every humiliation was the very reason Stella had always been a cold observer. She hated Leo's fake smiles, hated how he willingly let himself be degraded. In those moments, Stella would always feel like Leo was atoning for his sins through her. Through her eyes, through her embrace, listening for another person's voice in her heartbeat. Stella always had this feeling that Leo's love for her was shallow, superficial. That's why those comments never bothered her before. But in those few seconds of dead air after Leo hung up, his voice choked with emotion, Stella suddenly felt her heart skip a few beats. This wasn't how she had planned it. She had intended to give Leo an out, a way to save face. She had wanted to ask him why he'd moved out so suddenly without telling her. But none of those words ever came out. Stella grabbed an empty wine glass from the table and, without warning, smashed it on the floor. The room fell silent again. "Are you done?" she asked. Even Stella couldn't explain the source of the persistent irritation that she couldn't shake. Was it because she had impulsively let them use her phone to post that provocative status to get a rise out of Leo? Was it because she'd told him to get lost in front of everyone? Or was it because she had been so harsh on the phone just now? Stella didn't know. Of course she didn't. Because she was so used to being loved, she could trample on a sincere heart over and over again, without consequence. So even with all these things she shouldn't have done, there would never be a single "I'm sorry." Her beautiful face turned cold again. After all, a little flicker of irritation wasn't enough to spark guilt. And that tiny bit of guilt was nowhere near enough to make her back down. "Fine, don't come back," she thought, unfazed. He can't stay away forever. Just like the first time, the second time, and all the countless times before. There had to be a limit to how far Leo would push his luck. In June, my family set me up on a blind date with a doctor. My parents' exact words were, "You've been messing around out of town for years," and I didn't say anything. "But now that you're back, you're not leaving again. Dr. Lynn is young, successful, and has a stable career. I think she's much better than that girl you had in Boston." I quickly cut them off. "No problem. I'll do whatever you say." I agreed readily, but I didn't even add her contact information. My saturated work schedule was a reasonable excuse, but eventually, I couldn't put it off any longer. On the day we were supposed to meet, Dr. Vivian Lynn had an emergency surgery and asked if I could wait for her in her office at the hospital. I said that was fine. But the moment I stepped into the hospital, I regretted it. Hospitals were places that held too many painful memories for me. The smell of disinfectant always made me uncontrollably drift back into the past. After just a few minutes, I left her office, sent her a text saying I had to go, and planned to leave. But I wasn't paying attention to the directory, and when I looked up, I realized I'd gone the wrong way. Standing near the orthopedics department were a few familiar faces. Someone saw me from a distance and called out my name. "Leo, what took you so long?" I stood there for a moment trying to place them, before realizing they were Stella's friends. I couldn't tell if the half-beat my heart skipped was from the urge to go over and ask if Stella was hurt, or from the subconscious impulse to turn and run. Before I could decide, one of them ran over and grabbed my arm. I knew it. I knew that no matter how mad you were, you'd come as soon as you heard Stella was hurt. "Leo, about last time He half dragged me toward the hospital room, probably assuming I'd gotten a text from someone and rushed over. It wasn't until he looked up and saw my completely indifferent face that he stopped. I took a step back and pushed his hand away. Just as I was about to speak, the door to the room opened from the inside. Stella was standing in the doorway on crutches, one leg in a cast. The moment she saw me, her eyes widened in surprise. But the surprise quickly turned to awkwardness, and she spoke in a cold, harsh tone. "What are you doing here?" As if afraid I'd see her true feelings, she averted her gaze to a point behind me, her voice unnaturally stiff. "I told you not to tell him." The friends behind her started trying to smooth things over, their teamwork seamless. "It's okay, Stella. Leo's here now, isn't he? He probably dropped everything and rushed to the hospital the second he heard you were hurt. Right, Leo?" Stella's expression softened slightly. "Don't get the wrong idea. I didn't come to Atlanta looking for you. I'm just here for a project. I know I cut her off." Stella's head snapped up, her eyes landing on me again. It was only then that she finally realized. My expression held none of the worry she expected, not a trace of concern. Could even be described as exceptionally cold. I took another step back, finally getting a chance to speak again. "I'm not here for you either." For the first time, Stella's expression was one of pure confusion. She opened her mouth as if to say something, but before she could, a voice from behind me interrupted. "Leo, I thought you were waiting in the break room. How did you end up over here?" I turned toward the voice. Standing a few feet away was a graceful, young doctor. She smiled and waved at me. "Come on, I'm done." It took me a second to realize this must be the doctor my family had set me up with, Vivian Lynn. I nodded. "Okay." But just as I was about to turn, my arm was grabbed. I looked back. Stella was staring at me, her face dark, her hand gripping my arm with intense force. "Leo, don't you dare go with her." Her grip was so tight it felt like she was trying to crush my wrist. I frowned and tried to pull my hand away. "Let go." Stella ignored me, her eyes burning with a fire as she stared me down. Her voice sounded like it was being squeezed through her teeth. "I'll say it one more time. You are not going." But Vivian quickly stepped forward, pulling Stella's hand away and shielding me behind her. "Are you okay?" I shook my head, too tired to speak, not wanting to see the look on Stella's face. What her motives were, why she was in Atlanta, how she got hurt before I would have cared. But after that phone call, none of it had anything to do with me anymore. "Let's go." As I turned to leave with Vivian, I heard Stella scream my name in a furious rage behind me. Then came the clatter of a crutch falling, the thud of a body hitting the floor, and the shocked cries of her friends rushing to help her up. But my steps only faltered for a second. I didn't look back. I was absent-mindedly following Vivian when she finally put me in the passenger seat of her car. Only then did she ask casually, "Was that her? The one who received Chloe's heart?" My head shot up, and I stared at her in shock, but Vivian's expression was one of someone who had expected this. It was only then that I realized where the sense of familiarity about Vivian came from. "You don't recognize me?" Vivian gave a self-deprecating laugh. "Leo, you really have a terrible memory." With that, she turned away from me, started the car, and merged into traffic. I dug through my memories, and finally, the gentle, beautiful face before me merged with a younger, more innocent one from my past. "You're Vivian?" My voice suddenly failed me. I clenched my fists and said no more. Vivian was Chloe's best friend in high school. Back then, our relationship could even be described as good. But after Chloe died, I started deliberately avoiding everything and everyone related to my past with her. I couldn't accept that everyone else was living and moving forward while she alone was left behind. I cut off contact with many friends around that time, and Vivian was one of them. In the past 10 years, while Chloe remained vivid in my memory, everyone else had been covered in a layer of dust. So much so that when my family mentioned her name, I didn't recognize it at all. "How did you know about the heart?" I asked, turning to look at Vivian's profile. 10 years had passed, and she was very different from the person in my memory. Most of my fragmented memories of Vivian also included Chloe by her side. Seeing her, I couldn't help but wonder, if Chloe were still alive, would she have become an outstanding doctor too? I must have been staring for too long, because Vivian turned her head and caught me looking. I felt a flush of embarrassment. Where do you think you got the donor's information from all those years ago? I asked almost instinctively. It was you? She didn't turn back or look at me, her tone slightly mocking. If I had known back then that one sentence would trap your life in place, I probably... Vivian stopped mid-sentence and laughed again. I probably still would have told you. Leo, I never meant for you to get stuck in Boston for 10 years. When I told you the news, I was just hoping you could look forward. Wounds heal, but scars don't disappear. I knew you needed a reason to live, but I still feel... I'm sorry. After Vivian's confession, I was suddenly at a loss for words. After a long silence, I spoke softly. It's not your fault. She had only told me the news. I was the one who decided to atone for it through self-deception. I was the one who willingly degraded myself, hiding by Stella's side for 10 years, too afraid to face reality. Suddenly, it all felt so absurdly ironic. Vivian had secretly told me that Chloe's heart would continue to beat in someone else's body so that I could move on. But I used that news to lie to myself for another 10 years. Only now could I say with confidence that I had accepted Chloe's death. Leo, if Chloe were still alive, she probably wouldn't want you to be like this. The car finally stopped in front of a restaurant. She turned her head and smiled at me. I know it. She never would have blamed you. So stop atoning. You have nothing to be guilty of. Vivian turned out to be a pretty funny and interesting person. If she hadn't brought it up herself, I would have had a hard time connecting her to the Vivian from my memories. When she dropped me off at my apartment building, she produced a gift from somewhere and handed it to me. Seeing my flustered expression, she explained perfectly, "Don't read too much into it." Her tactfulness left me no room to refuse. After saying goodbye, I was walking toward my building with the flowers when I saw someone who shouldn't have been there. Stella. After our hurried encounter that afternoon, I could now see, as she leaned against her car, that she had indeed lost weight. Stella had a sensitive stomach and a long list of allergies, so there wasn't much she could eat when dining out. For all 4 years of college, I made her breakfast. Even so, she had been hospitalized more than once for sudden allergic reactions. It wasn't easy to help Stella gain weight, but it was very easy for her to become as thin as a rail. I couldn't say for sure if seeing her now, standing before me so undignified on her crutches, brought me more vindictive pleasure or sadness that she was doing so poorly. Leo, you two went on a date. Stella's face was dark as she stared at the gift in my hands. I had no intention of explaining anything to her. There was no need. My relationship with Vivian now, and what it might become in the future, was none of her business. I took a deep breath and pulled out my phone, opening the dialer. Is someone here with you? If you don't have anything else, then... Stella suddenly seemed to panic. You didn't answer me. Were you on a date with her, Leo? Why won't you come back to Boston? You left without a word, and you won't answer my calls. Leo, don't you know? She seemed to have forgotten her injury. As she took a step forward, she lost her balance and fell to the ground. I almost instinctively rushed forward to help her up, but I stopped myself right in front of her. We had nothing to do with each other anymore. Her not eating, her broken leg, none of it was my problem anymore. So in the end, I just walked around her, passed her without stopping, and went into the apartment building. Leo. Stella was on the ground, clutching her injured leg, watching my retreating back in humiliation. She called my name again. Leo. Maybe it was my imagination, but in the second the door closed, I thought I heard her complain through a sob. It hurts. After that day, I had prepared myself to be pestered by Stella. I knew her well enough after all. When she got an idea in her head, there was no telling what strange things she might do. Even if a dog you'd had for 10 years ran away, you'd probably be sad for a while, let alone a person who had taken care of you for a decade. It wouldn't be surprising if she mistook this sense of loss for liking or even love. People have that flaw. You don't know what you've got till it's gone. But I also knew it was all an illusion, because no kind of love grows thorns to hurt the other person. I had given love and I had received love. I knew that wasn't what it looked like. Stella didn't love me. She just couldn't stand losing. So it would be normal for her to act on a whim and harass me. But to my surprise, for a long time after that day, she didn't come looking for me. My life returned to normal. I started, as Vivian had said, a new life, and it turned out not to be as hard as I had imagined. I visited Chloe's grave and found that I was no longer afraid to see the gray and white photo on the tombstone. When I passed by that familiar street corner, I no longer froze in fear. I started seeing old friends, talking about the past, and speaking of it all with a sense of calm. Atlanta, which had been frozen in my memory for 10 years, began to thaw. I found that I was starting to be less afraid of walking forward alone. But just when I thought I could really start over, right before fall truly set in, Stella returned. And I finally found out what she had been doing during the months she was gone. She had moved her entire career focus to Atlanta, even renting an apartment right across from mine. Unlike the impulsive whim I had expected, Stella's actions suggested she was planning to settle down in Atlanta for good. What felt even more wrong was how her attitude toward me had completely changed. Flowers left at my door every morning. Breakfast handed to me by someone who had clearly been waiting outside for who knows how long. Her shameless insistence on driving me to and from work. All of this I could just about manage to ignore. But when she appeared in my company's conference room as a client, specifically requesting to work with me, I could no longer continue to give her the cold shoulder. I sighed, sat down across from her, and closed my folder. What do you really want? Stella dodged the question. I think this project has a lot of potential. I chose to partner with you because, you know, that's not what I'm talking about. Stella, you send me flowers, bring me breakfast, rent an apartment across from mine, and follow me to Atlanta. Don't tell me this is all for work. I looked at Stella with a mocking expression. I knew that even if I spelled it out like this, she wouldn't take the initiative to apologize or admit she liked me. That's just who Stella was. She cared too much about her pride, especially with me. No. She looked at me, as if finally mustering the courage to speak again. Leo, I'm here for you. When she said those words so earnestly, it was so absurd and ridiculous. It was almost funny. Truly. We had been together for 8, if not 10 years. During that time, my devotion to her wasn't total, but it was close to everything I had. I admit I was good to her because of the transplanted heart. But all those days we spent together were real. Not once did Stella ever give a positive response to my care or kindness. I know I brought this on myself. I deserved it. But now that I've stopped being a pathetic simp trying to please her, shouldn't she just stay put in Boston? Why? Why did she have to come find me? Wasn't she done playing games? Or was this some new trick? Stella, do you even know what you're saying? When I asked, she actually nodded with a serious expression. I know you're resentful about what happened before. I can apologize. I'm atoning for what I did wrong. I hope you can forgive me. Her expression softened as she continued. I wasn't the one who posted that thing you saw on social media the day you left Boston. I didn't think you'd actually leave. Leo, I never wanted you to really leave me. I know I was wrong. Will you forgive me? I always knew Stella was a smart person. She knew how to use her assets to make people soften. Finally, she was using that tactic on me. But as I looked at her, pleading pitifully, I felt absolutely nothing. In that moment, I suddenly felt there was no need to keep it a secret anymore. Whatever I might have owed Stella in the past, I had long since paid it back. We were even now. Stella, you had a heart transplant, didn't you? As I calmly laid everything out, Stella's face went pale. She, who was always so nonchalant and carefree, was rarely at such a loss, so utterly mortified. I don't believe you. You're lying to me. Stella shook her head, her eyes cast down, refusing to look at me. You're just mad at me, so you're making things up to hurt me. I ignored her evasion and continued to open my own wounds. You had a heart transplant in the summer you turned 18. All you know is that the donor died on the scene in a car accident and was declared brain dead. Her name was Chloe. She was 18 too. Stella, you know whether I'm lying or not. She finally fell completely silent. I knew she believed me. After a long pause, Stella spoke again, her voice hoarse. So you were good to me, you took care of me, it was never because you liked me, was it? She suddenly looked up, her eyes red as she stared into mine. I didn't avoid her gaze. I just nodded. Yes, I said. After those 2 words, Stella's tears suddenly started to fall. I had never seen her cry before. This was the first time. She whispered her accusation, her voice trembling, her tears silent. Liar. Leo, you're a liar. The tears kept streaming down her face, stripping the words of any threat. But she continued. How could you use me as a replacement for someone else? How could you just walk away after I started to like you? It's not fair. It was another one of Stella's tyrannical decrees, a rule that only the old, unconditionally obedient Leo would have followed. But the Leo sitting across from her now, the one who could watch her cry without feeling a single pang of heartache, would only say to her, please don't bother me again. If you're here, I can't move on. I looked seriously at Stella's confused, hurt face. I knew it would probably take her a long time to accept that the last 10 years had been a lie. But as the one who benefited from it, she had no standing to say anything more. Stella, let's just leave it at this. We're even. You don't belong in Atlanta. And neither do I. After that day, I really never saw Stella again. The client for the company project paid a hefty penalty to break the contract. The apartment across the street was, as expected, empty. No one showed up at my door at the same time every day with a new bouquet of flowers and a hot breakfast. But I decided to move anyway. Vivian came to help me on moving day. As the movers drove away, she magically produced another gift from her passenger seat. I took the gift and looked at her in surprise. You don't actually have a thing for me, do you? She laughed and gave my head a little shove. You're overthinking it. Seeing my relief, she asked suspiciously, what's that supposed to mean? Am I that bad? I waved my hands. Of course not, it's just that as I looked up at the bright sun, a late autumn wind carried a slight chill. I instinctively pulled my neck back into my fluffy coat. I told her, it's just that I think I'm fine on my own. I declined her offer to drive me to my new place and turned, walking forward at my own pace. The sun was bright, the air crisp and clear. I used to always be afraid of being alone, afraid of being abandoned, afraid of loneliness. But after all that fear, I realized there was nothing to be afraid of. You have to get used to being on your own. Being alone is fine.